Good morning to you. I am Mark Sudduth. It is now Saturday, the 29th of June, 2024. Time for the hurricane outlook and discussion. And we have a lot to talk about today. We've got Tropical Storm Beryl out here, now explicitly forecast to become a Category 3 hurricane or a major hurricane just prior to reaching the Windward Islands in a couple of days. Then, as you can see from the track there, forecast to get into the Caribbean Sea and maybe impacting Jamaica, possibly the Cayman Islands. We're going to have to watch this very closely. It is a small, in terms of its aerial size, but potent system right now, knocking on the door of becoming a hurricane, maybe by later today. And then it is forecast to become a major hurricane, as I mentioned. So we got a lot to talk about because we also have more coming behind this system in what could end up being a 1-2 punch for our friends down here in the Eastern Caribbean and beyond. So very, very active here as we end June, getting into the first part of July, right on par with what we were thinking would happen with the seasonal guidance. Now it is starting to take shape. So looking at the National Hurricane Center update here, we still have 94L sitting over the Yucatan right now. Showers and thunderstorms, heavy rain associated with that, so there are impacts. That should move on across the southern bay of Campeche. It might still develop. We will see. We have Beryl out here. Most recent update here showing 65 mile per hour wind and the pressure 998, and that's not very low, but the background pressures are pretty high overall. So when you get 998 relative to the background pressures, that is fairly low pressure for this system, and it's very small, very compact. I'll show you that on satellite in just a moment. Then this system, which will eventually become 96L, most of the computer models, especially the GFS, which did a great job signaling the arrival of Beryl, this system could go on to develop over the next few days as well, and we can see that represented on the 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook. There's 94L, there is Beryl, and then of course this is our next system here, now up to a 60% chance of further development. So let's go back over here to the home page of the Hurricane Center. I want to point out there are a lot of different graphics and text products here in this little dashboard, as I like to call it. And you guys should take full advantage of that all hurricane season long when there are advisories from the National Hurricane Center. You've got your wind speed probabilities, arrival time of expected winds, the history of the wind track itself, interactive map, and the actual static map here that shows that 5-day cone that we're all used to seeing. Just all kinds of really helpful information on here. The key messages and the rainfall potential, it is all right there. So be sure to take advantage of that. So let's go back over to our interactive tracking map. This is off the HurricaneTrack Insider site, completely supported by our Patreon community. And it really is neat. We can show you the different stats, the different times. All these things are interactive. And I think what's very good about this is we can zoom in. And while we always say, don't focus on, let me highlight it here in yellow, the skinny black line, because that's not the hurricane, would-be hurricane. The hurricane's going to be much larger than that. You know that. But people want to know where's the center going to go. But just remember, the effects do extend out beyond that spinning little graphic there and beyond these 1s and 2s. There's the Category 3 indication, by the way. The track should take the center south of Barbados, but that would put Barbados on the north side of the circulation, and we can continue to zoom in here. Pretty neat feature. Really appreciate that we have this map. It's fantastic. And you can clearly see where this is going to track through. The cone has nothing to do with impacts, by the way. That's just where the center is most of the time. It's a historic sort of guardrail of where the center should be, and if it drifts outside the cone, well, then there are some serious forecast errors. This tells us nothing of impact. I want you to look at that category number because that is important. Down here in the deep tropics, intensifying hurricanes can bring quite a punch, very strong downburst winds, that kind of thing. So you guys over here from Barbados up to St. Lucia, all the way down, maybe even to Tobago, all that looks pretty far south, but you never know. Everybody in this area definitely needs to be getting ready for potential tropical storm and hurricane impacts. Heavy rain, very strong wind, huge waves at the coast. You get some storm surge that blows into protected bays and whatnot where the water can funnel in there. Then as our system moves on, as Beryl gets into the Caribbean Sea. On the one hand, I want to bring me back on a little bit of good news here. We don't want them to hit anybody, these hurricanes. Nothing we can do about that. But there are certain areas where we would much rather them not go to. And one of those places is Haiti. And it is good to see that the track is shifting south of Haiti a little bit more. And the overall guidance envelope, I'll show you that in a moment, is as well. And I think it goes without saying that we have seen some really bad disasters, both natural and then now with the unrest that's happening there and the political situation in Haiti. We don't need anything like this. I mean, even a tropical depression coming through, dumping heavy rain. So that's a little bit of good news there. So what misses Haiti, we'll see, hopefully that's the case, could impact Jamaica. And then over here, at the end of the 5 days, we have the Cayman Islands through here. So we'll have to watch and see what this ends up doing over time. Some of the models indicating that it could weaken. We're going to have to just wait and see. This is later in the game, days 4 and 5. There's a lot of, I mean, look at the cone. The cone extends much farther out from the center at these time frames because in the days 4 and 5 time periods, there is more potential for error to occur with track guidance. So this is what the overall picture looks like on the wide scale. There's 94L currently tangled up over the Yucatan, but yes, strong feed of moisture coming in. Probably not the best of days down there in some of the resort areas, a very heavy rain in that region. And then I want to draw your attention to Beryl. Look how small it is overall. Typical of early season deep tropical development, even though we don't have these often. You know, it's not part of, every June we get this. When they do occur, they tend to be smaller. Just because of the dry air around, the tropical wave energy is just not quite as large. Just other reasons behind that. But they can be small and compact and fierce. Then, back over here, this is the energy that's eventually going to be, I think, our next storm eventually, and we'll deal with that, of course, as it comes. But that is concerning as well because we could have two passing through the same general region within just a few days of each other. I'll show you that on the modeling in just a few minutes. So this is what I'm talking about. This is the storm and soon to be hurricane. It's not a little dot, it's not a hurricane symbol or whatever. And then you've got the outer bands all through here. But overall, it is geographically small compared to a much larger hurricane. Like Maria was larger. Irma coming through, that was much larger. Those were later in the season. So these cores that are going to develop in these small systems, the inner core, it is going to be compact and very efficient. But it's also going to be very susceptible to minor changes in humidity and wind shear and that kind of thing. So they can go up very quickly and then drop back down in terms of intensity. And I can show you that as we move forward and look at some of the intensity guidance. Real quick, looking at the vorticity signature, kind of elongated over here with 94L. So we'll see how that ends up. It's going to go through the Bay of Campeche. Don't want to ignore it, though. It is there. And then there's the vort signature for Beryl, covered up now by the tropical storm symbol. And then way down south here, I mean, holy cow, that's 10 degrees north latitude, folks. And to the south of that is what will eventually be 96L. And then, like I said, I think is going to be our next named storm. So this is a really cool dashboard. Speaking of dashboards, from tropicaltidbits.com, Dr. Levi Cowan's site. Lots of good info here. And I wanted to show you some of the modeling here. This is the overall spaghetti models, as it has been known to be called over the years. And one remarkable thing to point out is that the guidance envelope is very tightly clustered, even out to days 4 and 5. You see that? So that kind of looks like the cone, right? As we call it, the cone of uncertainty, the forecast cone. It is good to see this on one hand because it shows that the forecast confidence is generally fairly high. And I've mentioned recently we don't see some going like this and a bunch of them over here and then just a whole random like, we don't know what's going to happen. That comes later in the year when you start introducing troughs and other things that can influence these systems. But down in the deep tropics, you typically do have a fairly tightly clustered guidance envelope, and that's what we're seeing here with Beryl. Good news in that it's reliable. Bad news is we're going to see some significant impacts for the Windward Islands and then eventually possibly Jamaica and possibly the Cayman Islands. And then longer term, we might see impacts to the Yucatan And then I know that a lot of people want to know, what about the lower 48? We're going to get there, I promise. So a big piece of all of this, of course, is our background state and the water temperatures. We've talked about this just so much. Very warm here in the deep tropics. Got the no El Nino over here, colder Pacific relative to average, and that is helping the overall background state to be very favorable. And now we have Beryl, and we're probably getting ready to have, what would it be, Chris, I think, farther to the east of Beryl, and I'll show you that here as we move forward. All right, let me explain what we're looking at. We're going to look at three different panels, or three different tabs, as it were, from the GFS, the Global Forecast System. It did really well, picking out the genesis of Beryl. Different models do well in different years. It's hard to explain why. Maybe one day I can get somebody from NOAA and the modeling center, or maybe even Dr. Cowan himself, to come on and explain computer models and how they work and why sometimes one is king and one is not. But, that matters little when we're talking impacts. We want to know what is going to happen. So let me talk about what we're seeing first here. This is the GFS. MSLP is mean sea level pressure in millibars, and instead of inches of mercury, and 10-meter wind. So 10 meters is, if we were 30 feet tall roughly, that's what that would be. So 10 meters is what, about 33 feet or so? So basically down where we live, right at the surface, right on the surface, okay? So there is Beryl, and it shows up very small down there. A little bit of a reflection of what will eventually be 96L. But then notice this huge area of high pressure sitting out over the Atlantic, kind of double-barreled there. And normally the trades would just be screaming through here, and we wouldn't really get much development. But this is not a normal year, clearly. So we've got Beryl down there. Watch what happens. It moves along. The GFS strengthens it really quickly as it approaches the islands there. Not a good signal for sure. And this is a global model. This is not a hurricane-specific model, right? So it does deepen it, as we call it, really quickly through the windwards there, and then on into the Caribbean it goes. Now, the GFS does get this closer, a little bit anyway, to Hispaniola, and then it goes pretty much right over Jamaica, and then there's day 5. I don't talk about track forecasts beyond day 5 because the Hurricane Center only goes to day 5. When we're looking at general stuff like before something forms, we'll go out to day 7 because that's what the graphical and the tropical weather outlook entail. So there's no reason, honestly, to look beyond day 5 because the errors start to become so great that you'll see one run, and you guys know this, the hurricane will go into Texas or it'll go to Mexico, and you just get all this anxiety over nothing. I know everybody can go look at it themselves, but to interpret it and to understand it, why does it show a Louisiana landfall this run, and then the next run, it's Florida or whatever? And people start just getting like, and then you get social media posts. You know how it goes. So I just like to stick to the 5-day time frame because 120 hours out is hard enough. Trying to deal with day 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, forget about it. So by day 5, could be looking at the system sitting here in the Northwest Caribbean between Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. Then, I'm sure you noticed, this next system comes through. Let's back it up. There's your 1-2 punch right there. Almost to the same area, maybe Barbados closer for that one. And this too could be another hurricane. We'll have to wait and see. Jumping the gun a little bit there. Got to see if it develops first. But that is a very ominous sign for our friends down here, especially in the Windward Islands. So let's zoom in on it a little bit. Now this is a different part of the atmosphere, 5,000 feet up, and we're looking at these lines here. These are called height lines, and that helps to understand at the lower part of the atmosphere where the ridging is and any weaknesses, troughs, that kind of thing. But we also see the outline of the energy, the vorticity, and there's the vorticity for 94L. And as I move this forward, you will see on the right-hand side, there comes Beryl, right? And it looks very well developed in the model. And then what I notice is kind of, and then it really fills in there. Really definitely gets stronger in the modeling there, just south of Barbados, pretty much right on the Hurricane Center's track. And then into the Caribbean it goes. And then there comes the next one, which goes right over Barbados at 108 hours. So we'll see. You know how this works. 50 miles, 10 miles even with these small systems can make a huge difference. And then on out to day 5, that is where our systems reside on the GFS here. Both of them looking quite healthy. This would be, I guess I said, as Chris, I think it's the Sea Storm. There's Beryl, but look how small they are. Because they are so small, again, they are susceptible to quick changes in intensity, both up and down, and we need to keep that in mind. Finally, just kind of gandering out into the future a little bit, looking at the steering pattern, again, the GFS, but now we're up at 500 millibars. Now, this is about 20,000 feet, something like that, kind of the middle part of the atmosphere. And these are your anomalies, like how much extra high pressure is there with the red gradient, or lower heights, as we call them, with the blue gradient. So more high pressure or less high pressure. So this shows us that we have anomalously strong high pressure over the Atlantic. And I'm going to tell you one thing as an aside. That is not a good sign at all. I'm just being straight with you here for the rest of the hurricane season. Anomalously strong high pressure tends to get these systems to come all the way across. It is not hard to figure out. Yes, we're going to have periods, especially later in the season, when we'll have troughs come down and that'll erode these stout ridges. And you can see one right there. That's a trough. That's a little shortwave trough. And that kind of jackhammers away at the ridge a little bit, thins it out. But you look at the height lines here, and it's like looking at mountaintops in topographic maps. That's exactly what this is. It's like a topographic map of the atmosphere. This is a big old mountain of air, and it's not going anywhere. And your storms don't turn into that. That does not happen. All right? So that's why this is going to continue to go west to west-northwest with time, it being Beryl, and then eventually with what would be Chris. And you can see that very clearly. And again, when you get the reds showing up, those are more air, basically, a stronger high-pressure area, anomalously so. And then you can even see the outline of the ridge itself right there. That's the 591 height line, and that's pretty stout, and that's going to keep it Beryl, and then eventually Chris there. Boy, I hope it is Chris this year. I think it is. But anyway, both systems probably buried down there so that they can't come up and affect, for example, the Bahamas or Florida, more than likely. So let's just take this all the way out to the 5-day time frame, and you'll see what I'm talking about there. So at day 5, what does the pattern look like? Well, there's a big old 594 ridge sitting right here, and then the 591 height line over here. Those, that thick of an area of high pressure, strong high pressure, just doesn't allow these systems to gain latitude. Again, put a big yellow X there. That's just not how the physics works. So more than likely, both of these features will move through the Caribbean and into this general direction over here by day 6. All right, we can at least speculate a little bit. Beyond that, we just need to see, does the ridge erode enough so that these gain latitude into the western Gulf, or does the ridge strengthen and these just go on across the Yucatan and into Mexico? Questions that we don't know the answers to any reliably way right now. All right? So yeah, we got to watch Beryl as it gets in there, and then eventually this next system, which again I think would be Chris. Lots of serious stuff going on. Everybody down there in the Windward Islands, I know I've got quite a few people that watch what I do, these videos, my social media posts, Twitter, etc., that live in that area, and you got to just start putting your hurricane action, plans in action now. Not August, it's happening, so be ready for that. All right? I'm on the road, finally heading back home after out here in the plains, basically since the end of April, off and on. I haven't been out here every day, studying hail, and we'll talk about that later. Right now, the hurricane stuff is certainly much more important, but that's why we've got the hotel background. It'll take me 2 or 3 more days to get home. Got some stuff to do along the way, and I'll be back in North Carolina in my office, in my studio, as it were, and we'll continue this from there. But along the way, every morning, I will be putting these videos out for you, all right? And a huge welcome and a huge thank you, too, to all the new subscribers on the YouTube channel. Glad to have you. Don't forget, you got to put that notification system into play so that you get notified when I post a new video. And that goes for anybody that you like to follow. I don't want to be completely self-serving here. Anybody that you reliably, say, hey, they're good. I like what they do. If you're following them on YouTube, put that notification button on, and you'll get a push notification or an email or whatever it is that content creator for this, stuff or whatever you follow, that you get notified. It's important, and us as the creators do appreciate it. All right. You guys have a great rest of your Saturday. From all of us at the Hurricane Track team, we appreciate you watching. I'm Mark Sudduth. I'll talk to you again tomorrow morning.